So one thing which cropped up around my Battalion 1944 video yesterday was the issue of authenticity and realism. And this is not a new topic in the sphere of military FPS. It started to be talked about more around Battlefield 1, and in the 1944 Kickstarter video the devs referred several times to creating the most authentic, down-the-barrel experience of World War II. Now before I get into this further, we should remember that something being authentic is to a point somewhat speculative. One thing that is not though, is that if you're trying to be authentic, that means you're striving to get it as close to real as you can. It's just that it may be more of an inspiration or an interpretation, not a literal translation. And that's why I think we've seen such a huge split of opinion around this. Nowhere in their video did the team talk about being an authentic, for example, Call of Duty experience. They talked about an authentic World War II experience. So whether it's looking down the barrel of your gun and seeing the look of your iron sights or the style of the environment as you look down those sights, those are what people are thinking about. And so it brings me back to what I said yesterday. If you're looking down the barrel of your gun, would seeing somebody jump off of a roof, sniping someone mid-air, be an authentic down the barrel World War II experience? I would argue that it is not. Would that be an authentic old school shooter experience? Yes, it would. Except that they never said that in the Kickstarter. What they said was the game was being developed by a team who grew up playing games like Medal of Honor and Call of Duty 2. Fine. Now realism in gaming is something which is often a bit of a misnomer. It's worth remembering that games like Arma are a simulation, not a realistic experience. Do they strive to lean towards realism? Yes, but that's not the same as it being a realistic game. In real life, it's unlikely you'd be able to take a 50 cal bullet to the head and then be bandaged out of it as you can in Arma, or that you'd be struck down by a bolt of lightning by an omnipotent Luton. But you can in Arma. You could perhaps talk about degrees of realism though, that something did a good job of simulating something to a realistic degree. For example, I enjoy the realistic look of this cockpit, or the guns look very realistic. But then you could similarly comment about something aesthetic being authentic. This is what seems to often confuse people. Also remember that for something to be authentic, that does not mean it's just a physical or a visual thing. You can have an authentic experience as much as something can look authentic. The way in which you see enemy units moving around you, that can be authentic. The missions, the types of missions you're playing, those can be authentic. So anytime any authentic down the barrel experience of World War II should be just that. It's not something that's complicated. If you're giving an authentic experience, then that means you are looking at something akin to more like Red Orchestra, not Call of Duty trick shots. A uniform can be authentic, a grenade can look authentic, the sound of a gun can be authentic. All of these things can also be realistic, but that varies by degrees. Something can be authentic and not necessarily realistic, but it can't be realistic without looking authentic. With a gameplay experience, the same principles should apply. You can have an authentic experience in as much as the situations and tone, the mood, the spirit, the atmosphere should replicate some of whatever situation is being described as authentic. I might, for example, let's take something not FPS related, let's take a rally game, okay, a racing game. When you're driving through a tough stage, coping with bad weather conditions and a difficult to navigate course, that's the game trying to make you have an authentic experience. But it wouldn't be realistic. If suddenly I had other cars jumping over me or strange tricks that were out of place in that scenario, then it's not authentic. If you're playing a military game from any era and people are jumping around all over the place doing quick scoping, that's not authentic. What about a game like Total War? Again, Creative Assembly are very careful with their historical games to ensure that the look and feel of the units and their actions, the movements they carry out, and the general tone and atmosphere of the gameplay are authentic historically. But you'd be hard pressed to call them realistic. And that's where you come to. When you're talking about something being authentic, what you're talking about is people's expectation of that. When you say something is authentic, people expect to have an experience which leans towards realism, almost by definition. It's also about spirit, evoking the spirit of a time and a period, and that means keeping more to the style of the time, something that Battlefield 1 has catastrophically failed to do. The initial Kickstarter for 1944 had much talk of historical visits, studying the look and the feel of these places, so as to authentically replicate this in the game. It's not a big stretch of the imagination to assume that in a game then you would also look to replicate the spirit of that period, and I don't think that's possible if people are strafe jumping and quickscoping with all the best will in the world. if they wanted to convey a game which was all about that style of gameplay, whilst they may have mentioned old school shooters, this style of gameplay and that kind of environment was not communicated in that initial pitch, and I think that's what's left many people confused and surprised. And where does this leave us then? Well, a quick look over the comments on my previous videos show that the vast majority agreed with this rationale. However, you guys are my audience, and by and large you're usually going to tend to agree with my opinion. That's why you watch my videos. And I'm sure that there are plenty of people who are more than happy with the style and direction of the game and where it's going. On the other hand, all I have heard for the past 24 hours is people saying that they backed the game but have now lost all interest after seeing the direction the game is headed in. Not just from subscribers, but even from other producers that I talked to about this. That to me suggests that at best the game they wanted to create was not properly communicated. Now, I'm sure that many people will say that no, that's not true, that they knew 100% from the outset what the game was going to be. Well, congratulations, because there seem to be a great many more people who didn't have that insight. This has been an interesting one, and the development of 1944 has definitely gone in a direction which I did not anticipate. Whilst it was leaning in this old school direction, I really did not see where we were going to end up with at this point in time. And as I say, it's left me a bit stunned. I'm kind of blown away actually by sort of just how different it was from what I anticipated. So tell me your thoughts about this and the issues around authenticity versus realism in gaming down in the comments below.